Mira tightened her grip on Ilara's hand, guiding her sister down the dim, silent hallway. Shadows clung to the walls, cast by the dim moonlight slipping through broken windows, revealing jagged shapes in the abandoned mansion. Their footsteps echoed faintly, a haunting reminder that they weren't as hidden as they'd like. The sisters, having slipped away from their stepmother's estate, had been on the run for days. This mansion, lost and forgotten, buried deep within the forest, had seemed like a sanctuary. But now Mira was not so sure. "Ilara, stay close," Mira whispered, feeling her sister's small, shaking hand in hers. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a warning, each gust of wind through the shattered windows like a ghostly whisper urging them to turn back. "It feels strange here," Ilara murmured, her voice barely a breath. Her gaze drifted over the broken stone walls, the torn curtains hanging limp, and a small layer of dust floating in the air. But something drew her in, an inexplicable pull toward a half-open door ahead. The sisters approached the door, and inside, they found what they hadn't expected: a library. Rows of ancient, crumbling books lined every wall, stacked so high that some touched the ceiling. There was a sense of history, of knowledge older than their lives, but also something more: a presence, a hum of latent magic. Ilara pulled her hand free, her eyes shining with curiosity. "Mira, look. We could learn so much here." She reached for a book bound in faded leather, brushing away the dust with reverent fingers. Mira shook her head, worry threading through her thoughts. "We're not here to read. We're here to hide, to stay safe. Remember that." But it was too late. Ilara had already opened the book. The moment it cracked open, a faint, whispering breeze swept through the library, and the candles on the shelves flickered to life. The dim light cast eerie shadows, and the room suddenly felt colder, as if the book itself were stealing warmth from the air. "Mira," Ilara's voice was soft, her eyes wide as she read. "This is no ordinary book." Mira took a step back, feeling a chill creep down her spine. "Close it, Ilara. Now." Ilara hesitated, but reluctantly shut the book. The library dimmed, the flickering lights extinguished, and the room fell back into silence. But something had changed. A presence now lingered, and Mira could sense that their time here would not be forgotten by whatever watched over this place. The sisters couldn't shake the feeling that they had awakened something in the library. That night, as they slept huddled in the farthest corner of the room, Mira's dreams were troubled. She saw visions of shifting shadows, faces she didn't recognize, and hands reaching out from the darkness, only to vanish when she tried to grasp them. When she awoke, the strange book was beside her, though she was certain they had left it on the shelf. "Ilara," she whispered, nudging her sister awake. Ilara's eyes fluttered open, and her gaze quickly landed on the book. "It's calling to us, Mira. Don't you feel it?" Mira shook her head, frowning. "It's dangerous. We shouldn't touch it." But Ilara was already reaching for the book. This time, Mira didn't stop her, a sense of resignation settling over her as Ilara's fingers traced the binding. She watched as Ilara opened the book, and strange, cryptic symbols appeared on the page. As Ilara murmured them softly, the air around them seemed to shift, taking on a dreamlike quality. "Mira, look." Ilara's voice was filled with awe as the room around them began to change. The crumbling walls faded, replaced by solid stone. The tattered curtains mended themselves, and the musty scent dissipated, replaced by the aroma of fresh lavender. Ilara's laughter filled the room as she looked around in wonder. "We're safe now. This is an illusion, Mira. The book can create illusions." But Mira remained cautious, sensing something sinister beneath the surface. "Ilara, what did you have to give to make this happen?" Ilara paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "I don't know. I just read the words." Mira felt a gnawing worry. If this book could bend reality, it would surely demand something in return, and Mira feared what that price might be. But for now, they were safe, and that was what mattered most. As the illusion faded, the sisters found themselves back in the dimly lit library, but a sense of peace had settled over them. They had a way to hide, a way to protect themselves, at least for now. The morning light filtered weakly through the library's cracked windows as Mira and Alara packed what little they had, preparing to leave. The illusion had given them a brief respite, but Mira was still uneasy. The magic was potent, yes, but it was unpredictable and seemed to take something from them each time they used it. She glanced at Alara, who looked worn, a shadow under her eyes that hadn't been there the night before. "We need to keep moving," Mira said, hoisting her small pack onto her shoulder. "We can't stay here." Alara sighed but nodded, casting one last longing glance at the library's shelves. "The book is powerful, Mira. It can help us." "Maybe," Mira replied, "but it's also dangerous. We have to be careful." She didn't voice her fear, the growing suspicion that each time they used the book, a part of them might be lost. They slipped out into the forest, the morning mist lingering around the towering trees like wisps of ghostly breath. The forest was dense, quiet, as if even the birds and animals feared to break the silence. Mira felt the weight of unseen eyes on them, the forest itself seeming to press closer. Hours passed as they wound deeper into the wilderness, and each step seemed to lead them further from any path. Myra's unease grew as she noticed subtle changes in their surroundings, trees bending in ways that defied nature, shadows twisting as if alive. Suddenly, the snap of a branch echoed through the silence, and Mira felt her heart leap. She gestured for Alara to hide, pulling her behind the twisted roots of a massive oak. The sound of footsteps grew louder, and Mira caught a glimpse of dark-cloaked figures, her stepmother's guards, scouring the forest. Mira held her breath, feeling Alara's hand tighten in hers. The memory of the illusions came back to her, and she knew they had one option. With a silent nod to Alara, they opened the book, whispering the cryptic symbols that danced on the page. The world around them shifted, and their figures blurred, blending into the shadows and trees. They watched as the guards moved past, oblivious. But when the illusion faded, Mira felt a strange heaviness in her chest, a sense of something lost, though she couldn't say what. She glanced at Alara, who looked pale, her hand trembling slightly. "Are you all right?" Mira asked, concern edging her voice. Alara gave a faint smile. "It's just tiring, that's all. We're safe, though. That's what matters." For now, Mira thought, casting a wary glance at the book. But for how long? As dusk approached, the sisters found themselves at the edge of a small clearing. A faint trail of smoke rose from a cabin nestled among the trees, and the scent of herbs drifted through the air, comforting yet foreign. Weary and in need of rest, they approached cautiously. A woman emerged from the cabin, her hair streaked with gray and her face lined with age. Her eyes, however, were sharp and knowing as they rested on the sisters, particularly on the book clutched in Alara's hands. "You look like you could use a bit of rest," she said, her voice low and steady. "Come inside. There's a fire and fresh tea." She glanced at the book and added, "And perhaps a bit of advice." The sisters exchanged a glance, but the woman's presence was oddly reassuring. They followed her into the cabin, where a small fire crackled and bundles of herbs hung from the rafters. The woman poured them cups of steaming tea, fragrant and calming. As they drank, the herbalist's gaze lingered on the book. "I see you found the Book of Midnight," she said. Her tone was neutral, but Mira sensed a hidden caution beneath it. Alara nodded. "It's helped us stay hidden, protected us." As of now, the woman arched an eyebrow, her gaze penetrating. "The book is ancient, powerful, and clever. It gives, yes, but it takes as well. Every spell, every illusion. It will claim something from you in return." Mira felt a shiver run down her spine, her suspicions confirmed. "What does it take?" she asked, gripping the teacup tightly. The herbalist's expression grew solemn. "Pieces of yourself. Memories, senses, emotions. Each use drains a little more, until one day, there's nothing left of you. The book has claimed many lives this way. It's bound to its owner, and that bond only strengthens with time." Alara's face paled, but she pressed on. "But if we're careful, if we only use it when absolutely necessary. The herbalist shook her head slowly. It's not so simple, child. The book is a tool, yes, but also a trap. It was forged with malice, designed to bind those who wield it. Using it means sacrificing parts of who you are. The words settled over them like a shadow, and Mira felt a surge of protectiveness toward her sister. Is there a way to break the bond? The herbalist studied them for a long moment before answering. Only by abandoning it, or by facing the force that created it. Her gaze grew distant, but few who try find their way back. The sisters left the cabin under the weight of the herbalist's warning, their minds troubled. Myra's fears had solidified, but Alara's eyes still held a glimmer of fascination. As they ventured deeper into the darkening woods, Mira couldn't help but wonder if their path was leading them toward freedom, or further into the book's trap. The herbalist's warning weighed heavily on Mira as they continued deeper into the forest. She couldn't shake the feeling that the book's presence had grown heavier, like a dark cloud hovering around them. Mira glanced at Alara, hoping to find doubt in her expression, but her sister's gaze held a spark of determination. Alara, Mira began cautiously, maybe we should try to get rid of the book. It's dangerous. You heard what the herbalist said. Alara shook her head, gripping the book tightly. She doesn't understand. This book has helped us escape. We're only using it because we have to. She looked away, her voice softening. Besides, it's part of us now, part of us. The phrase clung to Myra's thoughts as they walked. She felt that each step took them further from the safety they sought, deeper into something inescapable. As they ventured into the denser part of the forest, the air grew thick, heavy with the scent of damp earth and moss. The trees loomed closer, their branches intertwining overhead, casting shadows that twisted and stretched like ghostly arms. It was as if the forest itself knew their intentions, reacting to the book's influence. Suddenly, a cold wind whipped through the trees, and the sunlight dimmed, casting the forest in an eerie twilight. Mira shivered, glancing around. Something's wrong. It feels like the forest is closing in on us. Alara looked around, her face paling. Maybe it's just our imaginations, she whispered, though even she didn't sound convinced. Without warning, a low growl echoed from the trees, and Myra's heart raced. They pressed forward, quickening their pace as they heard more sounds. A snap of a twig, the rustling of leaves, and the faint, distant call of something that felt far from human. We need to find somewhere safe, Mira whispered, glancing over her shoulder. The shadows seemed to pulse, drawing closer. The sisters spotted a fallen tree forming a partial shelter, its roots twisted above them. They crawled underneath, huddling together as they waited, breaths held. Mira tightened her grip on Alara's hand, bracing for whatever danger might come, but no sound followed. The silence was almost worse. Nightfall descended, blanketing the forest in darkness as the sisters sat under the fallen tree. Every rustle, every whisper of wind sounded amplified, and Mira could feel the book's weight through the silence. It seemed to throb faintly, almost like a heartbeat, filling the air around them. Alara glanced at the book, her fingers brushing the cover as if for reassurance. We should use it, Mira, just to make sure we're hidden. Myra's gut twisted. She knew Alara's suggestion made sense, but the idea of using the book again filled her with dread. However, the distant snap of a branch made her choice for her. Mira nodded, watching as Alara opened the book, her eyes intent on the cryptic symbols that danced across the page. As Alara chanted softly, Mira felt a strange sensation wash over them, like a shroud settling around their hiding place. The shadows grew thicker, enveloping them, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. They had become invisible, hidden within a cloak of darkness. But even as the illusion took hold, Mira felt the familiar tug, the book demanding its price. This time, she sensed something sharper, almost painful, pulling at her memories, though she couldn't grasp which ones. Moments later, a group of cloaked figures passed, their silhouettes barely visible against the night. Mira could hear their low murmurs, the searchers cursing their bad luck as they combed the forest floor, stepping just inches from where the sisters hid. Her heart thundered, each beat loud in the silence, but she held her breath, hoping the illusion would last. As the searchers moved on, Mira exhaled, glancing at Alara, who looked even more drained than before. A faint line of blood trickled from her nose, and Myra's worry deepened. "Alara, are you all right?" Alara gave a shaky nod, wiping the blood away. "It's fine. I didn't even notice." But Mira could see the toll it was taking on her, the way her hand trembled slightly as she closed the book. They waited in silence until they were certain the searchers were gone, but Myra's unease grew. She could sense the book's hold tightening, as if each use drew them deeper into a bond that was becoming harder to sever. They resumed their journey, moving cautiously through the forest, but Mira felt the weight of the night pressing down, shadows lingering at the edges of her vision. They had managed to evade the searchers, but the book's cost was becoming clearer with each spell. As dawn approached, Mira knew they couldn't keep running forever. The book was a double-edged sword, one that might ultimately trap them if they weren't careful. As dawn broke, Mira and Alara emerged from the shadows, the exhaustion evident on both their faces. They walked in silence, the toll of the night's magic evident in their drained expressions. Myra's mind churned with worry, the herbalist's warning echoing in her thoughts, but she couldn't find the words to break the silence between them. Finally, Mira spoke, her voice hesitant. "Alara, I think we need to stop using the book. It's taking too much from us, more than we realize." Alara frowned, her grip tightening around the book's binding. "Mira, we wouldn't have made it this far without it. We're safe because of it." "Are we, though?" Mira shot back, feeling a pang of frustration. "Every time we use it, it takes something. I don't even know what I'm losing anymore, but it's like pieces of us are slipping away." Alara looked away, her face set in a stubborn expression. "I don't feel any different. Maybe you're just imagining it." The word stung, and Myra's frustration turned to anger. "It's not just my imagination, Alara. The herbalist warned us, remember? She said it was a trap." Alara glared at her. "The herbalist doesn't know what it's like to be hunted. She doesn't understand. This book is the only thing keeping us alive, Mira. Can't you see that?" Their voices grew louder, reverberating through the trees, and Mira felt a pang of regret. This wasn't what she wanted, but Alara's stubbornness, her refusal to see the danger, only fueled Myra's desperation. She took a step back, her heart pounding. "Alara, I'm just trying to protect us. This book, it's not worth losing ourselves." But Alara turned away, closing off. The rift between them felt like a canyon, widening with each word left unsaid. They continued in silence, Mira feeling the weight of the distance growing between them. She had always felt responsible for her sister, but now, with each step, it felt as if she was losing her. The silence stretched between them as they continued deeper into the forest. Mira stole glances at Alara, hoping to see a flicker of understanding, but her sister's face remained set, her fingers curled protectively around the book. It was a cold reminder of the bond that had grown between Alara and the dark magic, a bond Mira couldn't seem to break. Suddenly, the air shifted, a stillness settling over the forest that made the hairs on Myra's neck stand on end. They froze, and Mira reached for Alara, who stiffened beside her, eyes wide. Somewhere in the distance, they heard the snap of a branch, the deliberate sound of footsteps crunching on fallen leaves. Myra's heart pounded as she turned, looking for a place to hide, but before they could move, a voice cut through the stillness, dripping with malice. "Running from me won't do you any good. Girls," the voice was unmistakable, their stepmother's. She stood just a few yards away, flanked by her guards, her figure a dark silhouette against the morning light. Her eyes, cold and calculating, bore into them, and Mira felt a chill spread through her bones. "Did you really think you could hide?" the stepmother sneered, taking a step forward. "That book belongs to me, and I will have it back. Hand it over, and maybe I'll spare you." Alara clutched the book tighter, her face defiant. "It doesn't belong to you. It's ours now." The stepmother's laugh was cold, echoing through the trees like a warning. Foolish girl, that book is bound to our family, tied by blood and sacrifice. It was never meant for children to wield. Myra's mind raced. They couldn't use the book's magic again, not without risking another part of themselves. But facing their stepmother without it felt like surrender. She reached for Ilara's hand, giving it a squeeze, and whispered, "We can't let her take it." Ilara nodded, her grip on the book tightening, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of fear. The stepmother's guards began to advance, and Mira felt a surge of panic. Desperate, she and Ilara took off, sprinting into the forest. The sound of their pursuers grew closer, the snap of branches and heavy footsteps surrounding them. Myra's thoughts raced, trying to think of a way to escape. She glanced at Ilara, who seemed to hesitate, her hand hovering over the book. For a moment, Myra's fear spiked. She couldn't lose her sister to this magic, not now. "Don't use it," Mira hissed. "We can't afford to give up any more of ourselves." But Ilara's expression was conflicted, torn between her trust in Mira and her belief in the book's power. As the guards closed in, Mira knew they were out of options. Their stepmother's cruel laugh echoed behind them, sending a shiver down her spine. "Run, Ilara," Mira urged, leading them deeper into the forest. The trees seemed to close in, as if even the forest knew it was a final stand, a race against the darkness that had haunted them. They ran until their legs burned, but the shadows continued to loom, their stepmother's presence drawing nearer. Mira knew that soon they'd have to confront her, one way or another. The sisters didn't stop running until the echoes of their stepmother's mocking laughter faded into the distance. Myra's chest heaved, her lungs burning, and she leaned against a tree, trying to catch her breath. Ilara collapsed beside her, clutching the book as if it were a lifeline. Their silence held the weight of unspoken fears, each sister realizing that the escape was only temporary. "We can't keep doing this," Mira murmured, her gaze locked on the book. "There has to be a way to stop her, to break this connection." Ilara nodded, her face pale. "I don't know how, but maybe the book has answers." She opened it carefully, her fingers brushing across pages filled with symbols and sketches that seemed alive, shifting in the dim light. As they read, fragments of a dark family history unfolded. The book had been bound to their bloodline generations ago, forged as a weapon of protection and power by their ancestor, a sorceress named Corvina. But with that power had come a curse. The book demanded a price from its wielder, draining their life with each use until only a shell remained. Myra's blood ran cold. That's why she wants it so badly. She believes it will give her more power, more control. Ilara's eyes widened as she turned a page, revealing a sketch of a woman whose face looked hauntingly similar to their stepmother's. "It says here that only those of Corvina's bloodline can wield it fully. But those who misuse it," her voice trailed off as she read the final line, "the book shall consume them from within." The realization struck them both, and Mira felt a surge of resolve. She's tied to it, just like we are. But if the book is bound by blood, maybe there's a way to sever the connection. Ilara's brow furrowed. The herbalist mentioned something about facing the force that created it. Maybe that's the key. But if we want to stop her, we'll need to confront her directly. Mira hesitated, the fear in her chest tightening. Confronting their stepmother meant risking everything, especially as the book's grip on them grew stronger. Yet they couldn't keep running, not with the cost rising higher with every use of the book's magic. "We have to find a way to break free," Mira whispered, her gaze hardening. "Before the book takes everything." Ilara nodded, her determination matching Myra's. They had uncovered a truth that changed everything, but it also brought new dangers. As they closed the book, both sisters felt the weight of their decision. This was a path they couldn't turn back from. The sisters continued through the forest, each step heavier as they processed what they had learned. Their bond with the book had deepened with every use, and now, Mira feared it had bound them tighter than they realized. But a plan had started to form in her mind, hazy yet persistent, and it revolved around a single word: trust. "Elara," Mira began, glancing at her sister's determined face. "If we're going to break the bond, we need to be in sync. We can't let the book divide us." She paused, her voice trembling slightly. "I need you to trust me, to follow my lead, even if it means not using the book." Elara's expression flickered with doubt, and Mira felt a pang of hurt. They had always trusted each other, and yet the book had begun to drive a wedge between them. Elara hesitated, her fingers brushing the book's cover almost reflexively. "Mira, I do trust you, but what if we need it? I don't want to give it up completely. It's been our only defense." Mira swallowed her frustration, forcing herself to stay calm. "We have to try. Every time we use it, it takes more from us. If we keep relying on it, there might be nothing left by the time we face her." Elara bit her lip, her gaze flickering to the book before looking back at Mira. "All right, I'll try. I'll follow your lead." The agreement was tentative, fragile, but it was enough. Myra's heart lifted slightly, relieved that her sister was willing to trust her, even if only for now. As they moved deeper into the forest, Mira felt a sense of clarity she hadn't had before. They would have to find her stepmother on their own terms, without the book's interference, if they wanted any chance of breaking free. She hoped Elara's trust will hold. But as night fell, they heard movement nearby, a rustling in the underbrush. Myra's pulse quickened, her senses sharpening. She motioned for Elara to stay quiet, and they crouched, hidden behind a thick clump of ferns. The figure that emerged was not their stepmother or her guards. It was the herbalist, her face partially hidden beneath a hood, her movements deliberate and cautious as she scanned the forest around her. Mira felt a mixture of relief and suspicion. The herbalist had warned them, yes, but she also hadn't disclosed everything about the book's nature. "What are you doing here?" Mira asked, stepping out of the shadows, her tone cautious. The herbalist didn't look surprised to see them, as if she'd expected this meeting. "I came to offer guidance. You're nearing the end of your path with that book, and the choices you make now will decide your fate." Elara stepped forward, her expression a mix of hope and desperation. "You said we have to face the one who created it. Is there any other way?" The herbalist's gaze softened. "There are no shortcuts. Corvina's blood flows in your veins, as it does in hers. To sever the bond, you must confront her, not as daughters, but as equals. Otherwise, she will keep taking from you until there's nothing left." Mira nodded, feeling a surge of resolve. "We're ready. We just needed to know if we're doing the right thing." The herbalist gave a faint smile. "The book will test you. It has its own will, a shadow of Corvina's spirit. Trust each other, or it will use your fear against you." The warning lingered in the air as the herbalist disappeared into the trees, leaving them with more questions than answers. But as the sisters resumed their journey, Mira felt a renewed sense of purpose. The bond between them had been tested, but they would face whatever came next together. The forest grew darker as the sisters pressed forward, their resolve bolstered by the herbalist's words. Despite the tension between them, Mira felt a sliver of hope, clinging to the idea that they might be able to end this. She kept a steady pace, scanning the forest for any signs of their stepmother or her guards. The silence around them was oppressive, the only sounds being the crunch of leaves beneath their feet and the occasional hoot of an owl. Just as they began to relax, convinced they were alone, a voice pierced the quiet. "So, you're still running," came the herbalist's voice from behind them, startling both sisters. Mira and Elara turned to see the herbalist standing in the shadows, her face hidden beneath her hood. Mira felt a flash of relief, but something in the herbalist's stance seemed different, colder, calculating. "You again," Mira said, her voice wary. "Why are you here?" The herbalist tilted her head, a faint smile playing on her lips. "I warned you about the book, but perhaps I wasn't clear enough. There's a price for freedom, and sometimes it takes more than courage." She extended her hand, eyes gleaming with an intensity that sent a chill down Myra's spine. "Give me the book, and I'll take care of it. You'll be free from its burden." Mira felt her heart pound, an uneasy feeling settling over her. Ilara, however, stepped forward, her expression hopeful. "You'd really help us. You could break the curse." The herbalist's smile widened, but Mira sensed something off, a glint of something predatory in her eyes. She grabbed Ilara's arm, pulling her back. "No, she's lying." The herbalist's smile faded, replaced with a look of cold disdain. "Smart girl, but defiance has its limits." Before Mira could react, the herbalist made a quick gesture, and two figures emerged from the shadows, guards loyal to their stepmother. Realization crashed over Mira. The herbalist had betrayed them, leading them right into a trap. "Hand over the book," the herbalist commanded, her voice like ice, "or you'll never leave this forest." Myra's grip on Ilara tightened, but she saw the desperation in her sister's eyes. The guards closed in, and Mira knew they couldn't escape this time, not without using the book's magic. She felt a pang of dread, but she couldn't let the herbalist take them without a fight. "Ilara, do it," Mira whispered, her voice low. "Use the book, just this once." Ilara hesitated, fear mingling with hope as she opened the book, whispering the familiar incantation. Shadows began to twist around them, forming a protective shield. But as the spell took hold, Mira felt the familiar tug, the feeling of something slipping away, a memory, a fragment of herself. The illusion worked, casting them into shadow, and they managed to slip past the guards. But as they escaped deeper into the forest, Mira knew the cost had been steep. They had survived, but the betrayal and the book's toll weighed heavily on her. The sisters stumbled through the forest, breathless and shaken from the encounter. Myra's mind raced with questions, replaying the herbalist's betrayal. The trust they'd placed in her had been a mistake, one that nearly cost them everything. And now, the price of their survival was etched into their minds, the familiar sense of loss that came with each spell. "We can't trust anyone," Mira muttered, her tone grim. "Not with the book, not with what we know." Ilara nodded, but Mira saw the conflict in her eyes. "Maybe she was just desperate," Ilara suggested quietly. "Maybe she thought it was her only chance to get the book. Or maybe she's like our stepmother," Mira replied sharply, "willing to use us to get what she wants." They continued in silence, Myra's words lingering between them. But as they made their way deeper into the forest, Ilara's expression grew distant, her eyes flickering with a hint of fascination as she looked at the book. Mira noticed, a sense of foreboding filling her chest. "Ilara, are you okay?" Mira asked, watching her sister closely. Ilara hesitated, then nodded. I feel drawn to it, like it's calling to me. I know it's dangerous, but it feels familiar." The words chilled Mira, and she fought to keep her voice steady. "That's the curse, Ilara. It's the book's way of binding itself to us. Don't let it pull you in." But as they moved, Mira couldn't shake the feeling that the book was already entwining itself more deeply within Ilara. They stopped by a small clearing, the moonlight casting long shadows, and Ilara finally opened up, her voice barely a whisper. "I read something else in the book," Ilara admitted. "It said the magic requires something personal, something from within. It's like a piece of our own spirit goes into every spell. That's why it feels like I'm losing myself." The admission struck Mira, and she felt a wave of guilt for not pressing harder to abandon the book sooner. It wasn't just memories or senses that the book was taking. It was them, their essence, their very selves. "So it's not just taking fragments of our lives," Mira murmured, horror dawning on her. "It's binding us, piece by piece." Ilara looked at her, fear and understanding in her eyes. "And if we keep using it, there won't be anything left of us. We'll be like ghosts." Myra's resolve hardened. "Then we end this. No more illusions, no more spells. We confront her on our terms, with what strength we have left." Ilara nodded, though her gaze lingered on the book, her expression pained. But Mira felt a surge of determination. They were nearing the end of this twisted journey, and she would do everything to ensure that both of them survived with their souls intact. As they moved forward, Mira felt the weight of the book lesson in her mind, a small victory. They wouldn't be bound to it forever. But she couldn't ignore the doubt lingering in Alara's gaze. Their journey wasn't over, and the curse's hold was stronger than ever. As the forest grew denser, the weight of their decisions settled over them. Mira and Alara pressed onward, every step feeling heavier, the air thick with anticipation. They knew they were drawing closer to their stepmother. The book seemed to pull them forward, as if it knew what was to come. Myra's mind raced with memories of laughter with Alara, of their lives before the book had twisted their path. She gripped her sister's hand, a silent reminder of what they were fighting for. The clearing came into view, bathed in moonlight, casting their surroundings in an ethereal glow. And there, waiting for them, was their stepmother. Her presence was striking, as if she had been expecting this very moment, her figure draped in shadows. Her eyes gleamed with a dangerous intensity, fixed on the book in Alara's hands. "So, my little runaways," she sneered, her voice carrying a chill that froze Myra's blood. "You've finally brought me what's mine." Alara stepped forward, defiance in her stance. The book clutched tightly. "This book was never yours. It was never meant for someone like you." The stepmother laughed, a dark, mocking sound that echoed through the clearing. "You have no idea what power you hold in your hands. This book is bound to our blood, and I am the only one worthy of wielding it. Your children playing with forces you don't understand." Myra's heart pounded, and she whispered to Alara, "We have one chance. We have to trap her, use the book to create one final illusion." Alara hesitated, but a spark of determination flashed in her eyes. They didn't have time to think. Their stepmother was advancing, her gaze locked onto the book like a predator closing in on its prey. Mira whispered the spell, her voice trembling, feeling the book's dark energy pulse through her. Shadows began to swirl around them, creating a mist that distorted the clearing, casting illusions of trees and thickening shadows. Their stepmother stopped, glancing around in confusion as the illusion enveloped her. But as the spell took hold, Mira felt a wrenching pull inside her, as if the very core of her being were being drained. Her memories, her sense of self, all began to fade, slipping away like sand through her fingers. She staggered, her vision blurring. Alara cried out, catching her sister as Myra's legs gave way. Mira looked up, her eyes dazed, barely able to focus. "Alara, this is our only chance." Their stepmother's furious voice cut through the illusion, her frustration growing as the mist obscured her vision. But the spell was taking too much from Mira, leaving her on the brink of collapse. Alara held her close, whispering fiercely, "Hold on, Mira, just a little longer." With one last surge of strength, Mira forced herself to focus, pouring everything she had into the illusion. The shadows tightened around her stepmother, forming an impenetrable wall. Finally, the spell took hold completely, trapping her stepmother within the confines of the illusion, lost in a never-ending maze. As the final threads of the spell solidified, Mira slumped against Alara, her vision fading to black. She could feel herself slipping, the book's toll claiming her. But in her sister's arms, there was peace, a quiet sense of victory. Mira awoke to the gentle light of dawn, her surroundings blurred and softened. Her head throbbed, and for a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she felt a hand gripping hers tightly, grounding her. "Mira." Alara's voice broke the silence, filled with relief and fear. Are you really awake?" Mira nodded, though she felt hollow, as if parts of her were missing. Her memories came in flashes, fragments of herself slipping through her mind. The book's toll had been exacting, leaving her changed, her sense of self altered in ways she couldn't fully understand. "What happened?" Mira asked, her voice barely a whisper. Alara looked down, her expression a mix of sorrow and pride. "The illusion worked. She's trapped in there, lost in her own darkness." But she hesitated, her eyes filling with unshed tears. "It took so much from you, Mira. I thought I'd lost you." Mira forced a small smile, gripping Alara's hand with what strength she had left. "We did it. That's what matters. She felt a pang of sorrow for the pieces of herself that would never return, but the knowledge that they were free, truly free, was enough. They rose slowly, the clearing now bathed in warm sunlight, as if the forest itself were celebrating their triumph. The book lay at their feet, dark and silent, its power finally still. Ilara picked it up, her expression unreadable. "Do we keep it?" Ilara asked softly, her voice tinged with doubt. Mira shook her head, her gaze steady. "No, it has done enough. Let's leave it here, buried where it can't hurt anyone else." Ilara nodded, and together, they placed the book beneath a patch of earth, covering it with stones and soil until it was hidden from view. As they stepped back, a sense of peace washed over them, a feeling they hadn't known in what felt like a lifetime. They left the forest in silence, each step a release, a shedding of the fear and darkness that had shadowed them for so long. Mira felt the loss of what the book had taken, but with every step, her heart grew lighter, filled with the promise of a life free from its curse. As they reached the edge of the forest, Mira turned, glancing back one last time. The shadows seemed softer now, less menacing, and she felt a strange sense of closure. "Ilara," Mira said, her voice steady, "we're free." Ilara smiled, slipping her hand into Myra's. They walked together, their bond stronger than ever, carrying with them the lessons they had learned and the freedom they had fought for. The journey had changed them, but they were together, and that was all that mattered. The forest faded behind them, its secrets buried, its darkness left behind. And as the sun rose higher, the sisters stepped into a new dawn, free at last. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like to show your support. It really helps us bring more exciting stories your way. We'd love to know, what moment had the biggest impact on you in this story? Was it the final illusion, the secrets of the past, or the ultimate escape? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Also, we're always looking to create stories that you want to hear. Drop a comment with any story ideas or themes you'd like to see on this channel. Your feedback helps us grow and bring the stories you love to life. Thank you, and stay tuned for more adventures.